We are in progress with Joanny Causse, filmmaker, writer, director. The film we're talking about today is Rachel's Don't Run, a highly sophisticated production, very well executed, very well written, very thoughtful. Um, Joanny, would you like to introduce yourself or the film in any way prior to starting the three questions?
Sure. Yeah, no, first, thank you for having me.
My
So yeah,
pleasure.
the film is Rachel Don't Run. Briefly, we shot that in 2020, and the film has been out now for 2 years. So it was a very short process in pre-production and writing, and production was really fast, and then it took a while to get through post. But yeah, it's been great since the release of the film. The reception has been amazing. So it was passion project, and we didn't have much expectation for it, and it just kind of
Oh,
did as little.
it's beautiful, man. I mean,
Thank you.
it's beautiful. It's a great representation. I mean, it's so theatrical and cinematic. It's a very cinematic. It just shows how cinematic a one setup can be. I mean, it's really just one location. And you guys took a lot of, interesting twists and turns with the camera work. Really, really well produced, really well directed, well acted, scripted, very well written. Um, the first question of Play It Forward is, where did the seed experientially live inside of you for the impetus, the desire to make this movie?
So I've been trying to answer that question quite a bit myself, because the people usually talk about the tech aspect and AI being very popular right now. And it was not that popular. I mean, it was around, but not as present as it is now. And so I always say that, to me, the genesis of the project was loneliness and the desire for a connection, because we wrote this film during the pandemic. If people can't tell, there was a sense of like being alone in one environment and enclosed, and needing to like connect to one another and to other people and talk and just experience real human connections that we were not really getting, or only through medium like the phone or calls or Zoom and all that stuff. So really, and it tends to be overall in all the characters that I write, loners, and like this sense of alone and isolation is very important and in my writings and stories that I want to tell. So I think the very beginning of that was that feeling of isolation while having all the means to connect to anyone anywhere in the world at any given time. So that really is the starting point. And then obviously the AI and tech part is important in the film, but I would say it's the second tier, like second level. The very beginning was that sense of isolation.
So it makes me want to ask two follow-up questions. One, and I'll just throw both at you because one is pretty personal, and I don't know how comfortable you'll be sharing. But the first is like, why do you think you want to write films about loners? I mean, obviously, loneliness is a feeling that you have experienced, and yeah,
I think it's something that most people, I would say, I don't know, maybe I'm just speaking,
absolutely,
but
it's a human
experience.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's a very, yeah, profound human experience that we all go through eventually at some point in life, maybe throughout your whole life, and then we all deal with it a little differently. And I thought that's always been really interesting to me. I moved a lot, so I've been away from friends and family for a long time. So maybe that's also part of me in that
yeah.
sense. Yeah, it's a little tough to, yeah, to
Well,
boil it down, but yeah.
I think that says a lot. And as an artist, artists are often creating these inner worlds, and the inner worlds often come from isolation, some sort of childhood experience in isolation, where you have the ability or the interest to create these inner worlds. And then there's also the other side of going into that inner world to connect with something. And how do you connect through the process of art making, um, to something greater than just an imaginative landscape that is constructed in your head. And there's a lot of levels that can go on. I think in terms of the film and the themes, the loneliness is really kind of a little spun. The unique spin that is put on it in terms of the movie and the script is this guy who is lonely and this woman who is lonely, and they've through this AI world of like Lonely Hearts Club hotline, he's calling up and trying to connect. And when the script changes a little bit and the other person is sharing, and also and that's what happens when two people connect, right? There's a mutual sharing happening, right? That's how you kind of edge and get closer. Well, this guy all of a sudden has a different response. He doesn't want that part of it, and he is in the end rejects this human person and in preference of the AI. And to me, well, that's saying a lot, right? Is how much is the kind of the enabling of technology making us more and more selfish, right? As people, that seems to be like a dominant theme that this is exploring. As you, the creator, are here, man, in real life, talking about it, how do you see the message, the meaning, the journey of the film today?
Well, it feels like the film escaped us a little bit because of AI took such a big uh, amount of air recently, and
Yeah,
with the leaps they're making constantly and how good it's becoming,
right.
it almost feels like the film is like outdated already in a sense.
Oh no, it's so pertinent to the
Yeah.
time. Yeah,
Um, there is different things we try to touch upon, and one of the first thing is that AI is provided by companies, and companies, want their customers to connect with their brand and with their product. And so there's this idea that a company will make everything they can for customers to stick with them. And so they will provide the service that customer want, not necessarily what maybe they should, not challenge them necessarily, but more like to just feed whatever people want to hear and see. I mean, it's a broader uh, it echoes to broader things like social media and echo chambers and stuff like that. But there's also the sense of like we wanted him um, to seek out something specific that makes him feel better, and then when she encroaches on that choices that he made and challenges him, that reflects on her, because we really wanted to keep it subtle and complex in the sense that he's not a bad person just because he's rejecting her or just because he prefers AI. He's just in a specific time and a place looking for something, and that might not help him out in the long run. But he doesn't like to be challenged, and I guess that there's something about being challenged in the human interactions and relationship that I think is necessary and interesting, that not maybe everybody shares that point of view. And that's also what I think AI is a hard time reproducing, right? Is the imperfection of human beings that makes us all different and also interesting in their own ways. Technology can't really do that right now because they're basing it off, they're just a conglomerate of human beings' emotions and feelings and words. And they're lacking, maybe, I don't know, maybe they're already there and I don't even know about it since it's moving so fast. But that was also one thing we were really interested in, is that complexity in people. And grief, especially as a feeling, is very, everybody experiences it, but there's no blueprint for it. Everybody goes through it differently. And so that was also another layer of complexity that we wanted to add to both characters and how they deal with it differently as well.
well, I think that's a great point that you raise. And it what I hear you saying is basically, hey, this guy is chosen this product. He thinks it's totally artificial intelligence. He doesn't know that there's any like, auto this, I can, take over the piloting wheels, behind the scenes, and a real human can drive the train. So he has no idea. And he's saying, hey, I need some therapy. This is my version of therapy. I've just lost my mother. I want what's working for me, and I want to be in this fantasy world. And so the real lonely character is the character who is on the other side and working at the AI plant and is desperate. And she's seemingly fallen in love with this guy who sounds like a really nice guy who's mourning the loss of his mother. Here she is, she can connect to him, and she makes this leap of faith, which doesn't work out for her. And when you talk about it in that sense, it's very interesting because whatever the who disregard, or who's right or wrong, or who's selfish or not selfish, or what motivations are, you know she is really seeking to connect, and um she's the one who is trying to do it in an inappropriate place and an inappropriate way. And I guess what, in terms of that dynamic, in terms of that theme, people trying to connect, like extrapolating that to like our shared human experience, like, look, we're all, in need of, we're social animals, right? There's this famous psychological study that's in all like the 101 textbooks. There's a monkey, and the monkey has it's a baby monkey. And tell me if you've heard this. There's two um, surrogate mother monkey representations. One is, they're both have a shape, cylindrical shape, cone, or cylinder shape. One has it's just chicken wire, and the other is chicken wire. The chicken wire with One has chicken wire with milk, and the other has chicken wire with fur. And so the assumption was, well, the chicken wire with fur would be preferential over the no, sorry, the chicken wire with milk would be preferential over the chicken wire with fur, and that was incorrect. The monkeys preferred the fur, the touch, and the hugging of that over the milk. You know, and it's such a huge statement of our need for connection. And in life, there are so many missed connections, whether it's just like, you know, opening our hearts and saying hello to the guy who's giving us our groceries, or something else. And I guess I would say, well, what do you think is that dynamic that kind of makes connecting harder than maybe it needs to be?
Well, I would go back to, well, first, the complexity of human beings, and the maybe I'm speaking for, like, people who live in a country like the US or France, the two countries that I know.
Yeah,
um
it's a good point.
the busy life, I think the busyness of life in general uh distracts us maybe a little bit from others. I think I usually don't quote books or writers because I never remember exactly, but I think in Celine, the journey till the end of the night, I think it's called in English. There's a phrase about how people's own noise pushes life away. And I'm butchering the quote, but basically, yeah, this idea that we're constantly bombarded by thoughts and, well, notifications, if you want to go that route too, but like um thoughts and things we need to do and expectations, and that, yeah, maybe yeah, blinds us a little bit from seeing others and hearing others.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
And I think that point reflects on your character. I mean, I think it does open up some insight for me, for the main character played by the woman who is at the call center, um, because she's taking a very like why isn't she taking those chances in the real world to connect with others? Why is she doing it under this kind of cloak? And she is risking, it's a great risk, risking seemingly her job. Um, but what is the noise there that, her anonymity, the anonymous factor allows her to connect, right? And people do this online. That anonymity allows us to kind of reveal more than we would when we're out there by day.
Yeah, I think in her case too, there is this sense that she really understands what this guy is going through. She's really connecting with him, and that she thinks that by opening up very maybe abruptly or very candidly to him, there's going to be a reciprocity. He's going to respond to that because himself is opening up really to that AI, and so maybe I think the anonymous
Yeah, it's tough.
aspect
It's a
of that
tough one.
conversation, yeah, it's a tough one. Aspect of that conversation maybe allows her to be more self and to share more than she would otherwise. And also because like sharing such deep, complex feelings, you're exposing yourself and you're also taking a risk, as you said, to not be heard or listened to, which, you know, we've all been there too. You share something, you open up a little bit, and the person across from you doesn't respond whatsoever. It's very hurtful in a lot of ways. So I think that the film, there's this idea that she's taking a leap, but with the feeling that being anonymous, and also the sense that she's going to be able to connect with this guy because they're going through the same thing on paper,
Right, right.
is going to work out for her.
And that's where the film kind of introduces another theme, which is our own expectations. So I can't help it, man, but I want to say, like, what is the takeaway? Because the key film, like that film pivots around the rejection, right? If he was like, oh, I love you, yeah, like, let's talk more, like, okay, like, yeah, that's a nice movie too, but the rejection is really where the drama comes in. All of a sudden, that thwarting of her own expectations.
um I guess I go back and forth on that. I feel like obviously she's getting rejected, but on the other end, I always like to think that there is a form of progress for her in this.
What's the lesson for her?
I would say to me there's some progress for her in there because she shared something very personal, very deep, and very difficult to
Mm,
share, that
mm,
she was able to verbalize it. And of course she's getting rejected in that specific moment. And
mm,
the difficulty and the dehumanizing aspect of her job just
mm,
catches up with her right away at the end there.
mm,
But I don't know. I like to think there's some progress for her in this,
mm,
and that, grief again is something that's very slow and step by step, and that
mm,
she passed another step in it, and
mm,
sharing that deep feeling that she has, that sometimes she feels guilty about not thinking about her mother. So I think
mm.
there's something there.
That's cool. Yeah. I
That's
like it. I
I like
like
to
it,
think that
man.
way,
I
but
like
she's
that.
definitely getting rejected, no
I
doubt.
like that. I like that. I think that's a great point. I mean, I think even if it's not a happy ending, it doesn't mean that there's no progress, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Joanny, tell me this. Um, how have you been changed as a person since making this movie?
I always think about that monologue that she gives, and I think it kind of yeah, I share that feeling. I don't know if I shared that as much back then that I do now. I use it kind of as a compass a little bit, for my feelings towards grief and missing people, and the memory and all that. So I think that, yeah, that specifically that monologue and where she's at that specific moment in time in her life,
Tell
I
me
can
what,
use it as a yeah, as a compass a little bit at times of doubts.
how so? What are the specific, what's the specific text that you use as a compass?
That's the monologue that she gives right before he calls client services, and how she shares, her emotions,
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
feelings, and how, yeah, grief is roller coaster, you know, and how on the bad days she needs to remember that it's okay, and on the good days it's okay as well. It's not because you have a good day that you're forgetting people. I guess
Got it.
that's all the internal complexity of, you know,
That's
losing someone.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You know, all the films that are special, and I think all the films that we make and the stuff that we create is all a reflection of our own lives and our own struggles and our own understanding, you know, our own trying to come to the terms and understanding of those struggles. And so, you know, when you create something so personal and then you share that with people, it resonates. You know, everyone is going through something, and it is healing, not just for yourself, but the audience that's consuming the work. And Joanny, thank you so much for sharing yourself, sharing your work, and being open and staying open. I really, really appreciate it, man. It's a great film, and it's a great work of art.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It was real fun. Yeah, I appreciate the time you took, and yeah, letting me answer your questions.
Oh, please, man. It was my honor, a privilege. Joanny Causse, filmmaker, writer, director. The film is Rachel's Don't Run, and we'll link it. I mean, it's out.
In some territories, it is. Yeah, it's yeah.
You'll let us know. We'll do whatever you want. All right. All
All
right,
right.
guys. Till next time on Play It Forward. Peace out.